It is January 1961 in Washington, D.C. You are 86 years old, standing before a shivering, expectant crowd at the presidential inauguration. The air is bitterly cold, but the real adversary is the blinding glare of the winter sun striking the fresh snow. You step to the podium to read a newly composed verse, but the harsh light washes out the ink on the page. A massive, frozen audience watches you hesitate. You are Robert Frost, the undisputed grandfather of American literature, and you cannot read your own script. Rather than falter, you abandon the paper. You clear your throat, stare out at the faces before you, and flawlessly recite the gift outright, entirely from memory. You captivate the nation, radiating the unshakable aura of a quintessential Yankee sage. Yet beneath this carefully engineered public mask of folksy rural simplicity lies a fiercely competitive, profoundly tormented, private reality. This monumental New England identity is a brilliant invention, a survival mechanism forged from traumatic geographical collapse. You do not begin your life among the cold, rocky hills of the Northeast. You are born in March 1874 in San Francisco, California, a volatile western boomtown, awash in pistols and saloons. Your early childhood is shaped by the sunny, dangerous grit of the frontier and the fierce partisan politics of your father, a fiery Democrat. But this vibrant, chaotic world vanishes instantly in 1885 when tuberculosis suddenly claims his life. Stripped of stability and deeply disoriented, you relocate across the continent with your mother and sister. You arrive in Lawrence, Massachusetts, forced to live under the roof of your stern paternal grandparents. The abrupt transition from the warm, expansive West to the austere, freezing environment of New England violently uproots your sense of belonging. You must completely reinvent your surroundings and yourself, just to survive the harshness of this rocky new reality. As you enter adulthood, your fierce ambition demands an intellectual equal to anchor your turbulent spirit. By December 1895, you seek the hand of your high school co-valedictorian, Eleanor White. Upon her graduation from college, you present her with a singular, magnificent token of your devotion, a leather and gold-bound copy of your very first book of poetry. She meets this grand romantic gesture with cool pragmatism, rejecting the offering and the immediate proposal. The dismissal shatters you. Devastated and consumed by aimless despair, you flee south, wandering deep into the desolate, dismal swamp of Virginia. You walk the treacherous bogs, courting physical danger to match your internal ruin. You eventually return and secure her hand in marriage, binding yourselves together for a lifetime. But this terrifying episode exposes a deep, volatile emotional fragility. We often demand that our artists be romantically desperate, yet such obsessive need for validation rarely stays confined to courtship. It becomes a lifelong, suffocating weight on those they love. For over a decade, spanning from 1900 to 1912, you endure profound rural obscurity in Derry, New Hampshire. Working as a poultry farmer and an English teacher at Pinkerton Academy, you fail to gain any traction with the gatekeepers of American publishing. Your poetry is met with total silence. Worse than the professional rejection is the grueling reality of agricultural life. You are a notorious night owl, actively despising the early mornings and frequently failing to perform your dawn farming chores. There is a profound irony in American letters that the man who becomes synonymous with the rustic dawn and the honest sweat of rural labor spends his actual farming years hiding in the dark, fleeing the very tasks he will later romanticize. Instead of working the fields at sunrise, you stay awake in the kitchen late into the night. You quietly lurk behind closed doors, obsessively listening to the muffled cadences of people talking in the next room. You are hunting for the raw acoustic rhythm of human speech, engineering a revolutionary colloquial style you call the sound of sense. You forge this voice amid immense private grief, enduring the crushing deaths of your mother and your young son Elliot, pouring your isolation into lines the world continues to ignore. Realizing that remaining in the United States guarantees your failure, you gamble your entire family's future. You sell the dairy farm and cross the Atlantic to London. Here, free from domestic biases, your career explodes. You rapidly publish your breakthrough collections, A Boy's Will and North of Boston. You spend these transformative months taking long walking tours through the lush English countryside with fellow poet Edward Thomas, refining your craft. But victory brings new adversaries. The influential expatriate Ezra Pound aggressively attempts to champion your work, seeking to heavily edit your poetry and dictate your image. You fiercely refuse to become his protege. Your competitive intellect demands absolute professional control. To conquer the literary world, you realize you must rigorously defend your artistic autonomy from overbearing foreign elites who wish to claim your genius as their own discovery. Driven by the outbreak of global conflict in 1915, you return to your homeland. You arrive not as an obscure farmer, but as a celebrated literary figure. Settling on a new farm in Franconia, New Hampshire, you begin deliberately constructing the physical and public persona that will define the name Frost for a century. You cultivate a weathered, craggy appearance and let your hair grow wild and white. You adopt a thick, slightly gravelly tone of voice. When embarking on lucrative teaching and touring engagements, you refuse to simply read from a book. Instead, you captivate auditoriums by saying your poems, reciting them entirely from memory with a grandfatherly warmth. This unthreatening, folksy mask resolves your financial struggles entirely. It allows you to quietly and completely dominate the American cultural landscape, rendering your sharp, sophisticated inner intellect invisible to the very public that adores you. Yet this professional zenith runs parallel to a claustrophobic private nightmare. Between 1929 and 1940, a genetic shadow of mental illness tears through your bloodline. You watch helplessly as your sister Jeannie is institutionalized for schizophrenia, eventually dying in a facility. Soon after, you bury your daughter Marjorie, and then you lose Eleanor, your intellectual anchor of 4 decades. The most agonizing blow arrives when your son Carol sinks into severe depression. Despite your desperate, active attempts to talk him down over several agonizing weeks, he tragically takes his own life. The unbearable helplessness of this moment permanently shatters your private world. Terrified of the dark and the inherited madness lurking in your own mind, you refuse to sleep without the lights on. You spend your nights reading and writing to hold the inner demons at bay. Society routinely assumes that immense sorrow ennobles the sufferer, but profound loss just as frequently isolates a person, turning them defensive and brittle against a world that will not stop taking. Poetry, particularly in later collections like A Witness Tree, ceases to be a mere artistic pursuit. It becomes your fragile shield against cosmic isolation. By 1962, you wield immense political and cultural leverage during the most freezing depths of the Cold War. At 88 years old, remembering the frozen podium of the inauguration, you are dispatched by the Kennedy administration on a diplomatic goodwill mission to the Soviet Union. Stricken with a 101-degree fever in a foreign dacha, you refuse to cancel the summit. You spend 90 feverish minutes debating the nature of power and national greatness from your sickbed with Premier Nikita Khrushchev. But your volatile ego remains untamed. Upon returning to American soil, you cause a severe diplomatic crisis by misquoting the premier, telling reporters that Khrushchev believed Americans were too liberal to fight. The blunder infuriates John F. Kennedy, permanently ending your communication with the White House. You die in Boston, following prostate surgery in January 1963. Your passing unleashes a bitter posthumous war among biographers, tearing at the fabric of your legend. You leave behind a fractured legacy, violently split between accusations of monstrous egotism and the profound sorrow of a misunderstood patriarch. You end your journey exactly as you lived it, trapped in the haunting dichotomy between a carefully engineered public mask of folksy simplicity and a fiercely competitive, profoundly tormented private reality.